General anatomy, let's do on here. The general anatomy is like this. This is an adrenal gland, and this is a kidney. Adrenal, renal. Adrenal, renal. Can be called a renal gland as well. The renal capsule. Around the kidney is a capsule. And that's this maroon thing right here. That's that hard capsule around the kidney. Capsule, capsule. Capsule, capsule. All right, that's the renal capsule. Next word is the renal cortex. When I look at a kidney, I have this lighter outer area, which is the cortex. And I have this darker inner area called the medulla. Remember when you learned the adrenal gland, this was the adrenal cortex and that was the adrenal medulla? You're probably getting used to the idea now that the outside of an organ is the cortex and the middle is the medulla. So this is the cortex out here, and that's the medulla in here. You can see the cortex here. You can see the medulla here. And then the pyramids. The medulla is made of a whole bunch of pyramids. This is showing you one pyramid, uncut. See how it's uncut? But these pyramids are cut, but you can still see them. Here's a pyramid, here's a pyramid, 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 uncut pyramid. We'll talk about those pyramids in lecture. Well, I'll talk to you on the video about these pyramids. All right? Okay, now, the glomerular capsule, Bowman's capsule. You need to know these structures, plus you have to know how urine flows through it. So let me name the structures and tell you how urine is made and flows through it. Say again?
Still on general anatomy.
I didn't miss anything. Pyramid. Oh, papilla. Yeah, okay. I missed something. Down here in the bottom of my pyramids, I have a papilla. All right, that's my papilla. There's my papilla here. I have a renal column. In between my pyramids, I have where the cortex dips down in. These are called the renal columns. Renal column there, renal column there, renal column there, renal column there, renal column there. The renal columns are the areas between the pyramids. The hilus, just like in Bio 203 and the lungs, this indentation right here in my kidney, if I took out this renal pelvis and these arteries and veins, if I took those out, would you agree there would be an indentation in my kidney right there? That's the renal hilus. Yes, so you can see it right here. You can see the indentation right here, the renal hilus. It's just an indentation in the kidney where the ureters come out, the arteries go in, and the veins come out. That's the hilus. The renal corpuscle, not the capsule. The renal corpuscle is not the capsule. The renal corpuscle is the renal corpuscle. It is composed, in fact, this big model over here is a renal corpuscle. What this is one of these little yellow dots right here. See those little yellow dots? Greenish yellow? Well, see, that got bigger. So this model right here, you come over here and you blow up part of it. Right there. You take one of these and you completely blow it up and it's right here. This whole thing right here is a renal corpuscle. The renal corpuscle consists of this capillary bed right here called the glomerulus and Bowman's capsule surrounding the glomerulus. So the renal corpuscle is two things. Glomerulus plus Bowman's capsule. Glomerulus plus Bowman's capsule. Any questions about the renal corpuscle? All right. Now, look at this renal corpuscle here. They've cut away Bowman's capsule. But look at this one here, they have not. This is Bowman's capsule not cut away. This is Bowman's capsule cut away. But these are renal corpuscles. All right. Now let me tell you what a nephron is, and I'll name them while I'm pointing to them so you get them on video. And this is also the directional flow of the filtrate, which is going to become the urine. Right here, blood flows into my Bowman's capsule. The combination of the capillary bed and Bowman's capsule is called the renal corpuscle. This is where filtration occurs. I filter my blood. And I make this filtrate, the waste products that I took out of my blood. That filtrate flows through this proximal convoluted tubule. And then it flows down this descending limb of the Lupa Henle. Then it flows up this ascending limb of the Lupa Henle. Then it flows through this distal convoluted tubule. Then it flows into this collecting duct. Then it flows down into here, what I call my minor calyx. And then it flows into my major calyx. And then it flows into my renal pelvis. And then it flows into my ureter. And from my ureter, it flows down and hits my bladder. Any questions about that? Now that's the flow of the filtrate. So now, I told you what a nephron was. Well, I didn't actually tell you what a nephron is. Here's the nephron part of it. The nephron is the renal corpuscle, the proximal convoluted tubule, the loop of Henle, both limbs, and the distal convoluted tubule. Let me do that again. One nephron is the following: the renal corpuscle, the proximal convoluted tubule, the loop of Henle, and the distal convoluted tubule. If you're wondering why this collecting duct is not part of a nephron, because thousands of nephrons share a collecting duct. Thousands of nephrons dump their filtrate into a collecting duct. So how could one collecting duct belong to one nephron? It can't. Thousands of nephrons dump their filtrate in there. All right, now look at the nephrons always start with the renal corpuscle. They always start there. I have different types of nephrons. I have these nephrons that are real close to the medulla. See, this is a pyramid, and this maroon stuff is the medulla. These nephrons that are real close to the medulla are called juxtamedullary nephrons. Juxta means next to. Juxtamedullary nephrons. And then these nephrons that are up here high in the cortex are called cortical nephrons. Now, who gives a flip? Well, here's the deal. Cortical nephrons make up 85% of your nephrons. But the 15% juxtamedullary nephrons do more for concentrating your urine than the cortical nephrons do. The 15% juxtamedullary nephrons are very important in concentrating your urine. So they do have a different function as well as different anatomy. Cortical nephrons, look at this is a cortical nephron. Look at the loop of Henle. It doesn't go deep into the medulla. Look at the loop of Henle of the juxtamedullary nephron. It goes deep into the medulla, really deep into it. You're going to say to me, does that make a difference? Yes. Going deep into the medulla makes a difference. So juxtamedullary nephrons have long loops of Henle deep into the medulla. Cortical nephrons have short loops of Henle and they don't go deep in the medulla. Make sense? All right. We already talked about the glomerular capsule or Bowman's capsule. That's these little yellow things, or this bigger yellow thing, or this great big green thing. I don't know if they went from yellow to green. I guess it's kind of yellowish green here and there's green over here. This is Bowman's capsule. Inside Bowman's capsule is this capillary bed called the glomerulus. That capillary bed is called the glomerulus. Now next, the podocyte. Look at these tan cells right here on the glomerulus. They are podocytes. They wrap themselves around the capillaries, but they leave little slits I'll talk about in the lecture. All right? So these are podocytes here on the glomerulus, these tan cells. Proximal convoluted tubule, right here. Descending limb of the loop of Henle, right here. Ascending limb of the loop of Henle, right there. Distal convoluted tubule, right there. And now look at this. Do you see right here where my ascending limb of the loop of Henle approaches that Bowman's capsule? Actually, you might call it the distal convoluted tubule at this point. You see where my distal convoluted tubule approaches my Bowman's capsule? That is represented right here. This is my distal convoluted tubule approaching this Bowman's capsule. In my distal convoluted tubule that approach Bowman's capsule, in other words right here, I have these special cells called the macula densa. These are called macula densa cells. They're going to be part of this system called the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. That's what they're going to be part of. All right? So these are macula densa cells. All right. Let's do the blood flow. This is the renal artery going in. When the renal artery bifurcates, it bifurcates into segmental arteries. That's a segmental artery and that's a segmental artery. So renal artery, segmental artery, segmental artery. All right? Now, I don't agree with that, but Our lab doesn't have lobar arteries. Your lecture will, your book will too. And that's all right. Yeah, I know. There actually are lobars as well. Your book will have them and your lab doesn't have them. I'll skip them. These segmental arteries go up through the renal columns. Right here, right here, right here, right here. This artery right here is an interlobar artery. Interlobar. Then at the top of the pyramids, they arc. That's called the arcuate artery. Coming off the arcuate artery, I have these arteries going upward. They're called cortical radiate arteries, or they're called interlobular arteries. And here's the deal, your book's going to call them both. I use the word cortical radiate arteries for these. The reason being is because if I use the word interlobular, you got to remember that this is interlobar and this is interlobular, and they're close words. So I would rather you say renal artery, segmental artery, interlobar artery, arcuate artery, cortical radiate artery. Because then cortical radiate doesn't sound close to interlobar at all. So these are my cortical radiate arteries. Let's do it over here. Here's my interlobar artery. Here's my arcuate artery. Here's my cortical radiate artery. Coming off my cortical radiate arteries is an afferent arteriole going into Bowman's capsule. Here's my afferent arteriole. Here's my afferent arteriole. Here's my afferent arteriole. Now, contrary to what you learned in Bio 203, you learned that an artery goes into a capillary and a vein comes out. This is an exception. This afferent arteriole goes in and my efferent arteriole comes out. It's still an artery. It's an arteriole, but it's still an artery. So here's my afferent arteriole going in. Here's my capillary bed called the glomerulus. Here's my efferent arteriole coming out. All right. I'll come back to the JGA in a second, the juxtaglomerular apparatus. I'll come back to it. This capillary bed is called the glomerulus. This is called my efferent arteriole right here, coming out. Now, where does this efferent arteriole go? That goes to the capillary bed. Here's my afferent arteriole going in. Here's my efferent arteriole coming out, and there's my capillary bed, where the red turns to blue is my capillary bed. Now look at right here. I'm going to show you. Here's my afferent arteriole going in. Here's my efferent arteriole coming out, and here's my capillary bed. Now this capillary bed's in the cortex, and this capillary bed's in the medulla. Do they have different names? You bet. They have different names. The capillary beds in the cortex are called paratubular capillaries, and the capillary beds in the medulla are called vasa recta. I'll say that again. The capillary beds in the cortex are called paratubular capillaries, and the capillary beds in my medulla are called vasa recta. Any questions about those two different names for these capillary beds? Oh, I missed a whole bunch of words, didn't I? I'll go back to them. Vasa recta. I did. Okay, now let's do the veins coming back. They are named the same way going out. This is a cortical radiate vein. This is an arcuate vein. This is an interlobar vein. Therefore, that's an interlobar vein right there. And notice that they're skipping the segmental vein. They go straight to renal vein. So they go right from the interlobar veins to the renal vein. They're skipping the word segmental vein. Now, just so you know, some books that you read will actually divide these blood vessels up even further. They'll have lobar arteries and lobar veins. And they'll have segmental arteries and segmental veins. We're skipping a couple structures. It's all right. So any questions about cortical radiate veins, arcuate veins, interlobar veins, renal vein? All right, now, up under filtrate urine flow anatomy, I missed this whole second column. Starting with collecting duct. Let me go back and show you. Here's the collecting duct. Nephrons dump into it. And then this is the papilla. We already said that's the papilla. What the papilla does is the papilla dips into these little cup-shaped things called the minor calyx. See how this is a minor calyx and this is a minor calyx? But they share a major calyx. So these two minor calyces share this major calyx. These two minor calyces share this major calyx. And the two major calyces, and actually three of them here, so these two minors share that major. These two minors share that major. And these two minors share that major. And these three major calyces right here drain into one area called the renal pelvis. This is the renal pelvis. And then the renal pelvis gets narrow right here and forms a ureter. This ureter runs to my bladder. Let me show you the bladder. This is the ureter, right here, running to my bladder, right there. That's my bladder. Take that off, you can see that that's my bladder. And this is the urethra. So, I've got a ureter right here. I can't see the kidney, but here's the ureter running down. Ureter goes down, enters the bladder. Here's the bladder. And here's the urethra. Now that's on the male. Does it look slightly different on the female? Yes. Here's my ureter right here. Here's my ureter. And it's running down into my bladder. Now here's the thing. I need you to know that the uterus sits on top of the bladder. Don't get these two screwed up. This is the uterus. This is why when you're pregnant you have to urinate all the time because your baby's making your bladder smaller. This is the bladder. And this is the urethra. Notice the female urethra is very short and the male urethra is a lot longer. All right? Let me see. Any questions about those structures? No questions? All right, the histology part you could cross off because you got to do the urinalysis today. And while you guys are doing urinalysis, before you start calling me for microscope work, I'll go get the exam dragged over to the shared drive so I can review with you.